elephant in the room here, Professor Marandi, is always Israel. And it's a big elephant because it's attempting to squat on the
Well, it's
entire
a very
region.
small elephant, by the way.
Right.
Without the elephant, meaning the United States, Israel is nothing.
Yes, it's small in size, unfortunately outsized in its absolute brutality and barbarity. And Moody, the investment firm, is saying that Israel is in big trouble right now because it has expanded its war rapidly, actually, not just back into Gaza, into Syria, in Lebanon, still very active.
And the Americans, by the way, are the guarantors for the ceasefire in Gaza and in Lebanon, and the Americans allow the Israelis to murder people. How can, again, this goes back to what we're discussing at the beginning of the show. How can Iran negotiate with the United States when the United States does not respect the ceasefires that it itself was involved in putting into place and in which it itself is a guarantor? It has discredited itself completely.
The consequences of this are pretty grim, Professor Marandi. Could you talk about this? Because now Moody is saying that this is going to have long-term, very consequential effects on Israel itself. And this is getting, I think, glossed over in large part because Israel's brutality is so much in the forefront.
The more brutal it becomes, the more despised it is across the world, and the more Iran's argument makes sense to ordinary people when Iran says it is not a legitimate regime. When the Axis of Resistance says it is not a legitimate regime, now people across the world say they're right. This is not a legitimate regime. It is morally illegitimate. That is the ultimate defeat. There's no defeat greater than that. In many ways, it's worse than death and destruction itself. Would you, Danny, prefer to be alive and well and despised by everyone and considered to be immoral, brutal, a thief, a murderer, or to face all sorts of difficulties in life, but to be seen by those who are decent, at least, to be a man of decency? Israel has nothing left. It has destroyed itself. It can kill people, it can slaughter, but it's dead. It's already died in that respect. And who cares about Moody? Israel's, it's the force behind it is falling. The United States, the West, is declining rapidly. Israel itself is just a tiny dot on the map. Where did the bunker busters come from? Where did the F-16s come from? Where did the F-35s come from? Where do all where does all the financial assistance come from? I mean, now in the West, Germany kicks people out of the country who simply say, stop the genocide. The United States expels people from the country simply for writing articles that you shouldn't assist the genocide in Gaza. This is what the West has turned into. This is the decline of the West. This is the collapse of the empire. The Israeli regime should be more worried about what's happening in Europe and North America than what's happening to its own economy, because its own economy is unimportant. It's important, but compared to the West, which is facilitating its existence, which is key to its sustained hegemony, it's the West is far more important. The West is going downhill. The regime is going downhill. It's lost all of its wars. It's lost in Gaza. It's lost in Lebanon. We've gone over this. I don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over again. But Israel has lost. Israel, yes, Netanyahu is pushing for more war. That's what all these wars were about in the first place. That's why they invaded Lebanon, because Netanyahu needs the war. But all of these are just making things worse for the Israeli regime. And if there's a war between Iran and the United States and Iran, Israel will be the number one loser. Because the United States will not win that war, no matter what it does. Israel will not achieve any of its goals. This is the beginning of the end of Israel. I have no doubt about that. This is They brought it upon themselves. If the regime was smart, sinister but smart, it would have, as you know, I think I said this to you once, they would have carried out the genocide for a couple of months. At the beginning, many people believed their lies about, because the Western media helped them do that, and Western elites, the lies about beheadings and rapes and all that. But then they went on and on and on, and the people across the world became outraged. And then they started doing research, and then they saw that there were no rapes and there were no beheadings, and they're the ones who are raping Palestinians, and they're the ones who are beheading kids and slaughtering probably hundreds of thousands of people. And they've destroyed their own opportunity. They could have had, through deception, a win, but they turned it into catastrophic defeat. It's painful. I mean, watching all these kids die every day. I tweet these things. It bothers me. I don't like tweeting the footage of all these deaths and the destruction, but I feel I have a responsibility to keep reminding people that this hasn't stopped, to make sure people, because the Western media is not showing anything. They've also everyone has exposed themselves, all of them. This is the really good thing about all this. Look at look at all these regimes that pretend to support the Palestinian people. None of them have done anything. They're all in the American camp. Look at the Europeans and the Americans who pretend that they support human rights. They've all exposed themselves. Everyone is exposed. Everyone has been exposed. Everyone is an ally of Israel. All these, doing behind it's only the axis of resistance and people across the globe. The resistance, the extended resistance, the broader resistance, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, people from all walks of life, from all parts of the world, going to the streets, online, boycotting. And interestingly, now you have, for different reasons, of course, Europeans and Canadians calling for boycotts. And I encourage boycott. I think we should refrain from purchasing Western goods, even if we are in the West, to punish them. But they've isolated themselves at so many levels, so many different levels. I'm optimistic about the future, although it's possible that there could be a fight. It's possible. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm optimistic that the empire will fail. I'm optimistic that the axis of resistance will ultimately bring about alongside the broader resistance, will bring about an end to the Israeli regime. And Zionism has been exposed to the world. It will come to an end. And hopefully we'll see, after a lot of hardship and a lot of murder and slaughter, we will see Palestine as a place where non-Zionist Jews, Christians, Muslims, and others can live as equal human beings.
When I was listening to you talk, I just immediately started thinking about, even as this, just in Gaza alone, or what's happening in Lebanon, or just all across the tensions with Iran, it does feel like everything is getting started again with this exploding kind of this genocide that is having real ripple effects on Israel and the United States. And I think one of them is that, this is a forever war. I've always said that greater Israel is not achievable in the sense that how is Israel, this tiny colony that the United States is propping up, how is it going to rule a colonial dominion over all of this territory that it wants to obtain, when we've just witnessed, and we're going to witness it again, hasn't even started in a big way, but we're going to witness again the Palestinian resistance fight back even harder because of this violation, this complete and utter ripping up of the ceasefire. We're going to see that. So Israel's going to have to contend with that. It's getting attacked in Syria now by, some of them are terrorist forces. There's also a good number of Syrians that are participating in this resistance. And then you have the Iran question.
The resistance in Syria is alive.
Yes.
And there's nothing that Jolani or Erdogan can do about it.
Yes, yes. And then we haven't even witnessed.
They are the ones who struck at the Israeli regime, and for the first time, the Israelis took casualties, and they pulled back.
Exactly. And we haven't even witnessed, Professor Marandi, Hezbollah getting back into it. I know there are complicated things there with the ceasefire and all of this, but all of this is to say is that if Israel keeps pushing in this direction, as you said, accelerationism, trying to get everything at once as fast as possible, in the United States being completely and totally supportive of that, that's it. For me, it feels like digging a grave, but a lot of people doubt what my assessment, Professor Marandi, because they believe that the damage, there's a huge human toll to this, is proof enough that Israel will not only remain strong, but that the United States and Israel will eventually get their way, for example, with Iran.
Well, first of all, very briefly on Lebanon, what the Israelis and Americans are doing is that they are again vindicating Hezbollah, because the liberals in Lebanon and the Wahhabi and Salafis, which are also in the American camp in Lebanon, because they're funded by American client regimes and NATO regimes, they have been saying that Hezbollah has to disarm and the state should protect Lebanon. But the Israeli regime is bombing Lebanon, killing people, and the state says nothing and does nothing. And basically what they're showing to the whole Lebanese population and beyond, across the region, that Hezbollah is right. That if Hezbollah and the resistance do not have arms, that the Israeli regime will always strike with impunity. Whether it's in Lebanon or in Syria or Gaza or the West Bank or Iraq or Iran or Yemen or wherever. They will do anything because the West supports them. The West will support the Israelis no matter how many people they slaughter. They can slaughter millions and millions and millions, and the Germans and the French and the British and the Americans and the Canadians and the Australians and the Norwegians, they will all support them. They will support them, as even if you have hundreds of headless babies right in front of you on the ground, they will still support them. So what the Americans and the Europeans are doing is that they're exposing themselves. And the Israelis, they're showing the logic of Hezbollah to be correct in Syria. They're showing it to be correct in Lebanon. They're showing Hamas to be correct. The Israelis, what they're doing now in the West Bank, what is the ethnic cleansing that we now see in the West Bank and all the destruction that we see in Jenin and other places? What does that have to do with Gaza? It's a part of the greater Israeli project. People see the reality that peace with this expansionist, ethno-supremacist regime, which is not really an ethnicity. They're not Semites. That's why there's such huge restrictions on DNA tests in Israel. Half of them are Europeans and the other half are from across West Asia, North Africa, and elsewhere. Very few are really Semites. It's the Palestinians who are Semites. But in any case, people across the region see the Israeli regime for what it is, and they see the West for what they are, what they truly are. And if there are people out there who criticize the argument that you make, and they say, well, the regime is so powerful that they will defeat the Palestinian resistance, that only makes their responsibility even greater than before. That means that they are responsible if the Israeli regime defeats the resistance. Everyone is responsible. Everyone bears responsibility. Each and every one of us. Those who are, saying that we are the victory of the enemy is inevitable. They're responsible. We're all responsible. We are responsible for resisting, and we're all responsible for supporting the resistance. We're all responsible for supporting the Palestinian cause. And for us, what is more important than victory is being on the right side. And so we have a responsibility to do what we do. Whether we succeed or not, at one level, it's completely irrelevant. at another level, we're all responsible to achieve victory for the people of Palestine and to end this misery and this dystopia. And those who are attacking the resistance, or those who are demoralizing, trying to demoralize the resistance, they have to do the opposite. They have a responsibility. They have to be a part of the resistance. They have to stand up against those who are standing with the enemy, whether it's Erdogan or Sisi or Mohammed bin Zayed or the dictators in the Persian Gulf or in Qatar or in Europe or the United States or Canada. They all bear responsibility. Now, having said that, though, as I said earlier, I'm optimistic. The Israeli regime has destroyed itself. It is despised. It's exposed itself, and it will not succeed. These Israelis who are constantly killing kids, how is that going to impact the way in which they treat their own wives and children and neighbors? How is it going to be when they travel abroad and every time they show their Israeli passports, people look at them with disgust? And then many of those who are educated will leave the country. If not for the right reasons, at least they will leave the country. And many young Jews across the world have turned against Israel. I don't know what the real percentage is, but many of the most courageous activists are Israeli, are Jewish. I don't want to name names because I'll if I name 4 or 5 people and I don't name the others, then that may not be the right thing to do. But there's so many Jews that you and I both know, and your audience knows, in the media and elsewhere, and young Jews on the streets in New York that have sacrificed, that have been hurt in one form or another because of their activism at Columbia University, at across the everywhere. They paid a price. So things are changing, but victory is not going to come overnight. That's not how the real world works. It's not some Hollywood movie where at the final moment someone does something and the enemy collapses. It's tough. The enemy is stronger. The enemy has resources. The enemy has been doing this for a long time. But we will continue. We will remain steadfast, and we will not be intimidated, whether in the axis of resistance or in the broader resistance. And ultimately, as a Muslim, I have faith that God will support and help all those people who've been a part of this resistance, from all across the world. I remember, I said this maybe once, I remember early on when the genocide began, there was a young lady, a picture of her standing in front of the Israeli embassy in Seoul. I don't know her name, I don't know who she is, but it was said that she was there every day, every single day. Now look at, across the world what the mood is like. The numbers, you have these heroes, unsung heroes, like this woman and many like her everywhere, but the numbers are growing. And that I think is key.
Iran needs to do what it needs to do to protect its sovereignty and defend itself. And it will make those decisions about nuclear weapons, no nuclear weapons, as developments change. But Iran, if I support its self-determination 100%. The problem for me is that if the United States is going to make threats of war and then even nuclear war on Iran, then I 100% agree with you in the sense that then my responsibility as someone in the United States needs to be, that is the problem. That is the priority. That is the emphasis for me is, well, the United States is operating under a regime, a foreign policy regime, a political and economic regime that is not just irrational, but just absolutely destructive. And that is what needs to be changed, because that is what's fueling all of this, Professor Marandi, everything. It's fueling the genocide in Gaza. It's fueling the violations of Lebanon's sovereignty. It's fueling, Syria's dismemberment. It's fueling the Yemen, the bombings of Yemen, all of these things that we're talking about. It's that regime, which Israel is an appendage of, that is the problem here.
Usually in the West, they try to separate individual morality from collective morality. And I don't believe that, and I don't think any sane person really believes that. They say that because they want to keep their politics dirty, and they want to keep the rest of the people who are human and who have a sense of morality out of politics. Politics for us, they cannot be in conflict with morality. And the United States as an empire is completely void of any sense of morality. And therefore, it's the responsibility for everyone to stand up against it. As you were saying, how the West sees it as it's in its interest to destroy Israel's enemies or the axis of resistance. Israel is detrimental. Its very existence is detrimental to the West. It is a burden upon the West. It is destructive to the West. If it wasn't for the Israeli regime, Iran, the axis of resistance, the population across the region, they would have normal ties with the West. There wouldn't be a sea of refugees. There wouldn't be hatred and antagonism. There would be much more wealth, and there would be much more trade, and there would be much more business, and we would be living in a very different world. So the West chooses to destroy this region, or attempt to destroy this region, and create hatred across the region, which is itself a burden for the West. And it's not it's by no means in the interest of ordinary people, citizens in Western countries. It is in the interest of the Zionist elite, but it's not in the interest of ordinary citizens. And yes, I think that those who pursue this just cause and who resist, they have, they are the heroes of our time. Hezbollah, Ansarullah, others, they are heroes, but so are those ordinary kids on campuses and on the streets, who are active online, who are being harassed. They're all the heroes of our era, and hopefully we have to give them more support. We have to join them. We have to strengthen their numbers. And as I said, whether we succeed or fail, and I'm confident of success, but whether we succeed or fail is not important. What's important is, were we on the right side or not? And if we were on the right side, whether we fail or whether we succeed, ultimately it is success. We've succeeded at a personal level.